The Sacramento Kings dropped their fourth straight game Friday night in Cleveland, but that was only a small portion of the story. Domantas Sabonis had a turn back the clock game for the ages. What does that mean for the big man in Sacramento? What does it mean for the front office, the coaching staff? What does it mean for 29 other teams? Let's jump right in.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Kings. I am James Hamby, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Of course, I'm the new host of Locked On Kings. Very excited for this new adventure. I, of course, have covered the Sacramento Kings for the last 16 years for everybody under the sun, whether it's ESPN, under the True Hoop Network, NBA.com, NBC Sports Bay Area, California, ESPN 1320, where I currently reside, and, of course, the Kings Beat. Let's dive right into all the action tonight. We've got tons to talk about. The Sacramento Kings have a big-time Russell Westbrook problem, and it's just getting worse. On top of that, they had Malik Monk and Dennis Schröder really show up tonight and starting to build some chemistry with that second unit. Before we get into that, though, Domantas Sabonis coming back off of injury. He missed 27 games with a knee issue, and now he's back. All of a sudden, he started to look like the Domantas Sabonis we have known and loved for the last, 4 or 5 seasons here in Sacramento. Before we dive into all of this action, let's get to this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONKINGS for $50 off your first purchase. Look, Domantas Sabonis has been a tough story this season for the Sacramento Kings. He's battled injuries from the start of the season. He had a hamstring pull. He had some rib issues that totally slowed him down. He kept playing through it. Then, of course, he tore his meniscus in his knees. So that set him down for 27 games. Doug Christie has chosen a very interesting path with Domantas Sabonis during his first 4 games coming back from injury. First of all, Domas didn't play in the back-to-back, but in the other 4 games that Domas has played in, he's coming off the bench behind Maxime Reynaud, rookie superstar in the making, maybe, probably not, but at least a very nice rotational piece for the Sacramento Kings moving forward. But the 7-footer out of France has really played well in Domas's absence. Sabonis, of course, is wondering what's going on like everybody else is. He's not on a minutes restriction that we can tell. Doug Christie has dodged that question left and right anytime it's been asked. So at this point, we can only believe that Domas has lost a lot of his rotational minutes. Well, that didn't happen tonight. The Sacramento Kings got off to an absolutely ridiculously bad, pathetic start. Their starting group that included Russell Westbrook, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Precious Achiuwa, and Max Reynaud, they fell behind 16-2. The game was over. The game was over in the first 3 minutes of the game. Nobody looked like they had any energy, like they were playing together, like they had a game plan at all. Doug Christie did an entire line change 3 minutes into the game. He brought in Domantas Sabonis. He brought in Dennis Schröder and Malik Monk in the backcourt. He brought in Neat Clifford, and he brought in rookie Dylan Cardwell to step in and try to do something different. And the team instantly recovered. It was absolutely ridiculous watching this group fly around the court, get into all of their game action. The offense was humming. They really pulled together as a team. There was a point where the starters had been outscored by 31-3 in the first quarter. And a lot of that was Domantas Sabonis. The Kings big man played 31 minutes, the most minutes he's played since he's been back in the fold. In those 31 minutes, he had 24 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists. Probably could have had another 4 or 5 assists if the Kings were to hit their shots late in the game. He also had this really, really interesting play late where he got a steal and was in the open court and bricked the bunny, missed a layup in transition. Of course, you could tell at that moment that he was running out of juice and that he was having all kinds of issues. But look, this guy's been under a lot of pressure. He's been a lot of pressure to get back on the court, which is self-imposed because this is a guy who does not like to miss games at all. But also, look, the murmurs are everywhere. The latest reports out of Jake Fisher, who the People's Insider, Jake Fisher, has Domantas Sabonis potentially going to the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are interested in Sabonis. The Kings are looking at their roster and mulling over whether they're willing to take back an RJ Barrett, take back Jakob Poeltl, maybe take back Emmanuel Quickly. The Kings aren't looking to take back these huge contracts, so I assume that Jakob Poeltl and Emmanuel Quickly are pretty much out of the picture as far as right now. That could change between now and the trade deadline. But RJ Barrett, a player that Scott Perry, the Kings general manager, drafted as a rookie in 2019, maybe he does have some allure to the Sacramento Kings. It'd be a little tough because he does play the shooting guard position, maybe a little small forward. That position, of course, is taken up by Zach LaVine. And the problem the Kings have is Zach LaVine's under contract next season at $49 million. Brings us back to Domantas Sabonis. I think there was some concern around the league that maybe Domas wasn't going to be able to come back at full strength this season. You know, a knee injury like this, missing 27 games, clearly he's been out of rhythm, a little out of shape coming back, which is to be expected, especially with the Kings not being able to have practice with so many games at home over the last month. So you don't really know what you have in Domas, except for you have this incredible track record of a 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA player, and a guy who realistically was the linchpin in this team's success during the first Beam Team season. He's a guy who can pass the ball. He's led the league in rebounding the last 3 seasons. He's added the 3-point shot, although it's been a little erratic this season. He's just a guy who gets physical and doesn't mind pushing people around, which is exactly what we saw against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, does this mean that something is going to change, that Domantas Sabonis may stay a Sacramento King past the deadline? That's always been in the cards. There's nothing that says that Sabonis is going to be on his way out the door, at least nothing written in stone. The Kings still like what he brings to the table. They just know that they have 2 young centers to play that same exact position. And there's questions as to whether or not they all can play together or what that would mean to the development of Reynaud or Cardwell. Now, look, I think what we've seen so far from Domantas Sabonis and Dylan Cardwell as a pairing is really interesting. Cardwell is bringing the noise as a defender. He's rebounding. He's doing everything you can possibly imagine for a young player outside of scoring. Tonight, he did have 6 points. He's hanging out in the dunker spot. He's getting these beautiful alley-oops from, you know, every player that the Kings have, but even Domantas Sabonis is starting to feed him. And so this pairing seems to work initially. Whether it worked long-term, I don't know, but it sure would help if the Sacramento Kings had more shooters. What we do know is that this could possibly be one of the last games for Domantas Sabonis in a Kings jersey. There is a possibility that he is dealt between now and February 5th, the NBA trade deadline. And if that's the case, it's really interesting to see him come back on the court and actually look like himself. This was a big night for Sabonis. It was a big night for Doug Christie, who now has to make a really difficult decision as to whether he's going to insert him back into the starting lineup. Max Reynaud has played really well over the last couple of weeks. But also in the third quarter of this game, that's exactly what Doug Christie did. He replaced Reynaud in the starting lineup with Domantas Sabonis coming out of the break, and the team played all right. Did they get the win? No. But let's be honest, that's on a lot of players not named Domantas Sabonis in this game. And that's been the case all season long. When you miss 27 games, it's hard to blame Sabonis for the 8-33 record and now 8-34 record that the Kings have. 12-34 record that the Sacramento Kings now have. So look, this is going to be a work in progress, but I do think that what we saw tonight was a very, very interesting glimpse into what the Kings could look like with Sabonis back on the court. Will it lead to wins? Is winning what the Kings want? Is that even a good thing? I don't know. But what I do know is it's really nice to see a player who has a tremendous amount of value both to your franchise and on the open market have a game where he kind of showed that he's ready to get back into it and ready to be a major functional piece to whatever it is that the Sacramento Kings are doing. That might not be the case with some of the other players on this roster. We're going to dive into that after the break. Russell Westbrook is all over the board, and I don't know what that means for his long-term future with the Sacramento Kings, but the Kings should consider some options here. We'll be back in just one sec. During the basketball season, there is nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are going to cost. That's where Gametime comes in. The Gametime app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without guesswork. Browsing the Gametime app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding seats takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from the seats before buying them. Choosing seats easy and with confidence. Prices include fees up front, and the total is clear from the start. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON, LOCKED, NBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, well, welcome back in. I'm James Ham, listening to Locked On Kings here on the Locked On Network. The Sacramento Kings lost 123 to 119. It's not a horrible score. It's not something that you're totally concerned with. Let's see. Did I get the score right? 123 to 118. My bad. But they do seem to have a Russell Westbrook problem. And I think it's really interesting what we've seen from the Kings front office, from their ownership, from their marketing team so far. Russell Westbrook is an NBA legend. He's in his 18th season. He's 37 years old. He's going directly into the Hall of Fame as soon as he's hit his 5 years after retirement, whenever that is. To be honest with you, I think Russell Westbrook wants to play another 2, 3, 4 years. He lives, eats, drinks, sleeps NBA action. He's a gamer. And to be honest with you, there are nights where the Kings couldn't, make it without him. He brings energy. He plays with force. He's a guy who is always on the go. He doesn't take a play off. He's physical. But there are a lot of other issues when it comes to Russell Westbrook. We saw those issues last game when he couldn't stop turning the ball over. I think it was 6 turnovers. We saw it again tonight when he just couldn't hit this broadside of a barn with his shot. And it became a major problem for the Kings. He finishes with 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. He also shot 3 of 10 from 3 and 3 of 12 from the field. And in crunch time, when the Kings needed a shot, he not only took ill-advised shots, but he took out-of-rhythm shots that don't make any sense. He pauses halfway through his three-point shot. He's not in rhythm, and he still shoots. And to be honest with you, he shot the Kings out of the game late. And it's a reoccurring theme that this team has dealt with throughout the year. Now, here's sort of the rub. The Kings don't really have someone else that they're bringing along. They've made it very clear that Devin Carter's not a part of the future of this team. He hasn't played in weeks. And even when there is a blowout, he's not seeing any game time. Keon Ellis is another player who's just racking up DNPs at this point. He's back from a knee injury that he was struggling with like a week ago. But again, he's a healthy scratch, a couple of games in a row. So it's either Dennis Schröder or it's Malik Monk who's going to take those minutes. And to be honest with you, neither one of those guys have stepped up a tremendous amount throughout the season and shown that, hey, we need to be that guy that gets all the minutes. Now, here's the problem that I have is when you get late in the game, sometimes you don't need a point guard. Sometimes you don't need to force the ball. But what you certainly don't need is somebody who's taking ill-advised shots and not playing the team basketball that this team needs. And so I think they do have a problem here. The franchise has done this really odd thing where, a guy who's been here a couple of months, 4 months he's been here, 3 months, he's signed right before the start of the season. They just had Russell Westbrook night. They gave out posters one night. Then they had like tribute videos the whole night, the next game on a second night of a back-to-back at home. And they've really bought into this. And look, Russell Westbrook deserves a lot of that. He just became the all-time leading scorer for an NBA point guard. He's moved past Magic Johnson this season for in the assist category. And I think he's number 6 all-time in assists in the NBA. He's the all-time leading rebounder for guard, which happened again this year. He also passed 2,000 steals for his career this year. So look, the accolades are there, and I don't want to take anything away from what he's meant to the league and what he's meant to the NBA, and even this season when things are going bad, what he's meant to the Kings as a vessel to sell tickets. But there needs to be a point where he's not playing 30 minutes a night. And I don't know how that's going to happen. And to be honest with you, the Kings need to figure out what direction they're going to take at this position anyways. And so for right now, we're watching a player go out there and realistically, he's doing whatever he wants. And I don't think that that's a culture building thing that's happening. I don't think it's great for the Kings that you have a couple of players on this team that are just choosing their own adventure in each and every game. And to be honest with you, Russell Westbrook has become one of those players. I can look at his stats. He's averaging 15.6 points. He's averaging 6.9 assists. He's averaging 6.1 rebounds. Really, he's doing a lot of things that you didn't think he could still do at this age. And he's doing it at a high level. He's been a lot more productive than he has been in other stops. He's hit the three ball better this season than he has in past seasons. And that's something that the Sacramento Kings absolutely had to have. But that doesn't change the fact that in certain games, it's very difficult to win when he makes the decisions that he does. And again, it's turnovers, it's shot selection. It's not sharing the ball with wide open rookies that are standing by ready to shoot. And so at the end of the day, number one, the Kings need to find their long-term answer, whether that's between now and the NBA trade deadline, or whether it's in the NBA draft this summer, or it's as a free agent or a trade. They're going to need to address this position. The fact that you signed a guy, after training camp and he's starting for you and started most of the season for you at the point guard position, it speaks volumes about the roster construction of this team. I'm not blaming Scott Perry for the roster construction this season. I think he's just trying to get through this year, his first year in Sacramento, and he's trying to make changes to this roster left and right. But at the end of the day, the Kings need some sort of option here. And I don't know what that is. It could be Isaiah Stevens coming up on his two-way contract and getting some minutes just to see if you can start developing some young player behind Russell Westbrook. But the fact is, again, at 12 and 34, this shouldn't be about, wins and losses. It also shouldn't be about 37, 36, 32-year-old players playing 30-plus minutes every single night. It should be about developing every position, not just your young big guys and maybe Nick Clifford. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe Nick Clifford slides over and plays a little bit more at the point guard position. That's a possibility. He's got the skill set. He's 6'5". He's got handles. He's a great passer. He loves to draw and kick. And maybe that's an answer that they can start delving into. But whatever it is, it needs to kind of speed up here, because at the end of the day, this shouldn't be about wins and losses. It should be about development. And that's what the scoreboard looks like every night. That's what the record looks like. And at some point, even if you are just trying to win games, you probably need to try to win games with players that are doing other things than we're seeing in crunch time than Russell Westbrook. Kind of a harsh reality, but that's the way I see it. And it's not easy. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to dive into the other two guys that are playing that position, Malik Monk, Dennis Schröder. All of a sudden, they're building a little bit of chemistry, which is really interesting to see. All right. This portion of the Locked On podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right into the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time have become appointment viewing for the NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour and look for boosts, bonuses, and surprises. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's happening during NBA Happy Hour every Friday night from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday night energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, I'm back. Sacramento Kings lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's a tough one. They were right in the game. It started off horrible, and a 16-2 start by the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I think for me, what stood out outside of Domantas Sabonis coming in and just playing extremely well, just had a really, really nice performance tonight, was the guard play of both Malik Monk and Dennis Schroeder. It hasn't always looked good this season. And I think that these two are really struggling with who is the primary ball handler on this team when they go to the second unit. Is it Malik Monk and his high flying ability to get to the lane and create for others? He's one of the best pick and roll guards in the league, or at least he was before this season. He's really taken a step back as a creator. And that's because the Kings have another point guard off the bench in Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder, of course, is the Kings' big free agent acquisition this year. He's a long-term NBA vet that's played for 10 different teams during his NBA career. And to be honest with you, there's a good chance that he might be a player that teams call on between now and February 5th. He's on a mid-level exception contract. It's very possible that a team looks at him and says, hey, look, we need point guard depth, and it's not that big of a commitment. It's this year, it's next year at $15 million, and then a third year at a little over 15, but with a $4 million buyout. So the two of these players, I think, on face, they don't look like they're going to fit together at all. And I look back at, when we saw De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton in the same backcourt, and it really looked like one guy would do his thing, and then the other guy would do his thing. And some nights, one guy would do too much, and the other guy would not get enough touches. But this was one of those games where I think both of the players kind of figure out how to play together. And this was a game where, the Kings had no business coming back and being part of. This probably should have been a 30-point blowout, but the Cavs, let off the gas a little bit, and the Kings got hot. They got hot early, and they fought their way back into it. Dennis Schroeder finished with 21 points. He had 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He was 3 of 5 from 3, and a lot of his 3-point shots were off ball. So really nice to see him as sort of a motion shooter, like flying around the perimeter and getting open and having his teammates find him. Again, 3 of 5 from 3 is exactly what you like to see from your backup point guard. He was a plus 19 in a game that you lost. I could say the same thing about Domas. Domas ran a plus 10, but then we also had Malik Monk, and Malik Monk had 16 points. He had 7 assists. So in this game, again, Malik Monk went from being the, flashy scorer that we've seen from him the last couple of years to the creator. I think the Kings got away from this for some reason. And the last couple of seasons, Malik Monk's averaged 5.5 assists a game. This year, he's under 3 assists per game. And so to watch him go out there and find Dylan Cardwell for the lob, or help set up Domantas Sabonis for some of his buckets, or find Dennis Schroeder for an open 3. This is exactly the player that Malik Monk has always been. He brings this energy, this vibe. He changes the complexity and the energy on the court. And that's something that the Kings have completely missed this season. It's been really, really rough to see not only Monk be in and out of the rotation, but sort of in the doghouse. It's also been rough to hear Monk, his name mentioned in countless trade rumors, and whether or not he's going to get dealt for Jonathan Kuminga has been a question dating all the way back to maybe July. And that's not an easy thing for a player to go through. So I think what I saw tonight was really impressive. Again, it came in a loss, but if we weren't going to point out some of the positives here on the Locked On podcast, the Locked On Kings podcast, we wouldn't have anything to talk about, because look, if it's just about wins and losses, the Kings are going to lose a lot more than they're going to win in the second half of the season. The chance of them recovering here and making some crazy run and getting back in the playoff picture is almost none. They're in the middle of the beginning of a 6-game road trip. This was game 1, and during this trip, they play every good team in the Eastern Conference you can possibly imagine, and then the Washington Wizards. So if you look at their last home game, which was on Wednesday, they played the Toronto Raptors. They're basically playing the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference all the way through this trip. So you're going to have a stop in Philly. You're going to have a stop against the New York Knicks. You're going to see the Detroit Pistons. This is a really, really tough road trip. and they're going to need the energy of these players like Malik Monk. You're already on a 4-game losing streak. I wouldn't be surprised if this stretches out to an 8-game losing streak before they go into the game against Washington right at the end of the trip. Again, that's a getaway game. Who knows if they can come up with a win in that? But if they play the way they did tonight in Cleveland, I do think that they have an opportunity to maybe sneak out a win or two, especially with a team like the Knicks who aren't playing that well. But you're going to need to find ways to do that. And I think the easiest pathway forward is if you can find some sort of synergy with Malik Monk and Dennis Schroeder. I do think that there's a good chance Domantas Sabonis is going to move back into the starting lineup. I think once that happens, that's going to take a little bit of adjustment. But I also believe that everyone on this team, not named Keegan Murray, who's not, who's injured and is not able to play at this point with an ankle sprain, and then maybe the 3 young guys and Neat Clifford and Dylan Cardwell and Max Reynaud, but everyone else on this team is looking over their shoulder. They all know that the NBA trade deadline is on February 5th. They all know that the Kings are open for business and shopping just about anyone and everyone on the roster. And that's tough. But at the end of the day, you're getting paid to play basketball. So I want to see more of this Schroeder and Monk combo. I want to see what they have. If they can start developing chemistry with guys like Reynaud, if they can continue to build more chemistry with Dylan Cardwell, if Neat Clifford can be part of that group off the bench that really provides sort of the defensive spark, but also maybe you give him some opportunities to run the point while these guys sit out and launch threes. And so I think there are options here for this thing to not turn around, but to certainly be more watchable. And it's probably going to start with this group of players in Schroeder and Monk, and of course Sabonis as long as he's here. So it's going to be a tough weekend. The Kings play Detroit on Sunday. We'll have another episode of Locked On after the Kings and Pistons game. Looking forward to it. And then we're going to hit the ground running here. I'm looking forward to what's happening here on the Locked On podcast. It's different. It's something new for me. I'm going to make mistakes here. I've said that. I said that on episode 1. But I'm super excited about the opportunity and super excited to talk Kings basketball with you guys out there in the kingdom. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Kings. See you in a couple of days.